Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. We are about to begin recording. Right now, it looks as if we have, hold on. Give me 1 second. Okay, thank you for attending the December Black Liberation Caucus meeting. We are going to begin my name is Shante McLaughlin with the Atlanta Metro Branch. We are going to begin by going around and introducing ourselves and which branch we're at. And what is that? George, what's that screen share? Okay, there we go. If we can begin. Let's see. There's 6 of us on the call. Adrian Bernal was on the call, and I don't see him any longer. So Felina, Philip, George, Teresa. We'll give Teresa for last because she'll be discussing the conference. So Philip, George, or Felina, would you like to go first?
Hi, I'm Felina Farley. I'm an at-large member in Ohio. And I guess that's it.
Thank you for joining us. Here comes Deidre. Philip, would you like to go? I saw you come off mute.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Philip Cole, and I am a member of the San Francisco branch. And thank you for holding the session today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. George Friday.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm George Friday. I'm in the Triad branch in Gastonia, North Carolina. Glad to be with you today. I can't put my camera on because my Wi-Fi has been kind of shaky. Shantae's the co-host, so if I lose my connection altogether, the meeting will not end. We trust that. Thank you so much. And happy season, happy Kwanzaa, all that good stuff.
Thank you, George. Teresa, before you go, Deidre, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Deidre Whittlesey. I'm with the Fannie Lou Hamer branch in part of the Farms Board. I'm sorry, what did you ask for me to share other than to introduce myself? And I'm glad to be here and happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. Adrian.
Hey.
Hi.
How are
Would you like to introduce yourself?
I couldn't get on. Okay. I couldn't get on my phone, so I'm here. But I was sick all week with a high fever and all that. But here I am.
It's not COVID, is it? Are you okay?
I don't think it's COVID. I have my taste and all that.
Well, you're here.
But yeah, I get tired and I lay down and I slept like 40 hours one day. 24 hours. I lay down at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday and got up at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday. It was crazy.
Wow.
I get up and lay down again. But Sally was kind of sick too, not as much as me. But we're okay. It didn't kill us, so it just make us stronger.
Yeah. Glad you're here. Glad you're with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. All I see is the agenda.
Teresa, would you like to share now, or would you like to wait until everyone else introduces themselves?
Yes, let Jean and Rosa go so we can get all the introductions and see how many branches we have represented.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Jean Kennedy.
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to be on the phone, and happy New Year's to all of you. I can relate to Brother Adrian. I had the same thing. I'm getting over something myself, so it must be that time of the year for that. Those weather is bringing us these feelings. Anyway, I'm on. I don't plan to talk too much today, so I'm going to be listening more than anything due to just getting over a cold or something. All right.
And which branch are you with?
I'm sorry. I'm with the Fresno branch, Central Valley. That's in California.
Thank you. And Miss Rosa Saavedra. And I hope you feel better, Jean.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rosa Saavedra. I'm in the Triangle branch, which is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Is there anything else?
No, what was the introduction was just who we are, what branch we're in, right?
Yes, and if there's anything brief that you'd like to share.
Not right now.
Okay, thank you. And last but certainly not least, Miss Teresa Elamine.
Well, you know, this is such an exciting thing that we've been meeting with the Black Liberation Conference Caucus for 6 months now. Our first meeting was in June, and here we are in December. And I believe we have 6 branches represented and an at-large member. I hope Felina, if she hasn't done it already, will join the Jane Addams branch. That is the branch for at-large members, but it's great to have San Francisco, Metro Atlanta, the Triangle.
Uh-oh, you're on mute. And I can't, can I take you off mute?
Yeah, sorry, hit the wrong button. And of course, the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. I want to just take 5 minutes to explain what we did on December 11th. I know that Adrian and George and Philip were there, and Deidre was there for part of the time, but December 11th was the first annual Fannie Lou Hamer Branch Human Rights Conference. We received a $1,500 mini grant from Wealth National, which allowed us to pay the people who were presenters who were not Wealth members at the start of the process. Since that time, Rebecca Irby, who is now in the Detroit branch, she joined Wealth, and she was a facilitator of the treaty prohibiting nuclear weapons breakout. Adrian Bernal and Samantha Turner were the co-facilitators for immigration justice. Akinyele Umoja and Tatiana Reyes were the facilitators for the UN Decade for People of African Descent and Reparations, that breakout, and the Ending Mass Incarceration and the Death Penalty facilitators were Joya Thornton and Walisha Wilson, both who live in Atlanta and will be joining the Metro Atlanta branch. Walisha made it pretty clear that she plans to join in January. So I hope Shantae and Adrian will welcome her. Hopefully Joya will also join. Tatiana lives in Rhode Island, and she's going to join Rhode Island, where we have at least one member there. So we're looking to build a statewide branch in Rhode Island. One of the strategic objectives of the conference was to build the membership in Wealth US across the country, and to encourage the branches as a second strategic objective to participate in the human rights work in the 4 topic areas. And as you notice, 3 of the topic areas are part of the Advancing Human Rights Committee which is a standing committee, which I think most of us are involved with in one of the subcommittees. So I will say before I forget, the UN Decade for People of African Descent and Reparations Subcommittee of Advancing Human Rights will be meeting on Friday, January 14th, excuse me, at 7 p.m. for 1 hour via Zoom. The second annual Fannie Lou Hamer Human Rights Conference is going to be in Atlanta. So we're really counting on the Metro Atlanta branch to support it. You remember where we first met, Shantae, at that Sonesta Hotel? Well,
Definitely.
that's where it's going to be. They have a great basement, a conference area where we would be in a very private area. And so we would go down the stairs to that area where there's a large meeting room and several breakout rooms, and we will have that whole floor. The Sonesta Hotel bases the free meeting rooms on how many sleeping rooms you would have. So if we take a certain number of sleeping rooms and we fill 80% of those sleeping rooms, then all of the meeting rooms are at a very low cost. And so it is the most frugal way to do it. And we'll be applying for the Plowshares Fund grant. We'll submit our concept note in February, and George Friday and I will be working on the concept note from the 12th to the 15th when it's due. And then I expect us to be invited to submit a full proposal. And I estimate that that proposal will probably be requesting $30,000 to fund the conference in December of 2022. Plowshares has already said that they would accept a proposal to fund a conference based on what I described to them. And I've already invited 3 other groups in the South to submit proposals. 2 of the groups are in Georgia, in the Atlanta area. One is Nuclear Watch South, and the other one is Georgia Women in Action for New Directions. They're both headed up by women. Nuclear Watch South is 40 years old. One is probably about the same length of time, but one has a new director, a young woman of African descent. And so she's very excited about me telling her about the opportunity, because the centerpiece of the Plowshares funding is about nuclear weapons and other things associated with nuclear. So that's my report. And for those who were in attendance, I would like to hear what they thought about the conference, because we did have 109 people in attendance at some point. They were in and out, so we never had more than 100 at one time. And the bulk of the folks who stayed for the breakouts were about 65 people. So it was a good first start, and I'm pretty sure we could get about 100 to 150 people at the Atlanta conference, because we have lots of partners who will endorse it and help with the turnout in Atlanta. Plus, people can fly directly into the Atlanta airport and get the free shuttle service from the Atlanta airport directly to the hotel. So it's going to be much better having it in Atlanta than having it in Columbus. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Those are amazing numbers. Congratulations for the first event. Do you have the date for December of 2022 already? The
Yes.
tentative date?
Yeah, it is Human Rights Day, December 10th. It's a Saturday. And we will start registering people on that Friday. So we'll open up registration from noon to 5 on Friday. And then the conference itself will start with a beautiful buffet breakfast. And I'm thinking we'll be charging people $50 per person for registration. And so that makes it reasonable, and that will cover breakfast on Saturday and lunch on Saturday. And the Sinesta Hotel has a beautiful buffet, breakfast and buffet lunch. And so I think we can cover it for $20 or $25 per person. So people paying a $50 registration fee will cover the food. But December 9th and December 10th, those of us who are organizers will probably arrive at the hotel on December 8th, since we'll be getting started early on the 9th with registration. So the host committee, which will be Fannie Lou Hamer people who don't live in Atlanta, will be provided hotel rooms to help with it, with the conference organizing. And we may hire a conference coordinator. I'm thinking that Rebecca Irby has that skill set, but she has said that she would not accept any pay, but we want to be able to pay an actual conference organizer. And so we'll be probably putting out a job announcement as soon as we know we have the money from Plowshares.
Thank you. Okay, you can count me in next year. When you were planning, I told you I had a pre-existing event that day, and so I was unable to make it, but I put it in my schedule, and you can count me in for any kind of support from the Atlanta Metro branch. Thank you, Queen Teresa Alameen. We appreciate you and all of the work that you've done through the years. All right, George, would you mind sharing the BOPA? Wait.
Oh, well, Shantae, I wanted to hear
Before we
from
share the BOPA.
Shantae, I wanted to hear from Deidre and Adrian and George and other people who were in attendance, Philip and others, on what they actually thought about it and what they think might be improved for an on-the-ground conference.
Definitely, definitely. Would anyone like to comment on their perspective of the event, as far as the content covered, the attendance, the quality of the event, anything that they could see that was missing that could help to improve it for next year? Just any kind of feedback.
I'm happy to share, but I don't want to go first.
Okay, George, we'll save the
Tell you
best
the
for
truth.
last. All right.
This is Deidre. The portion that I heard, I had to work that day, so I really wasn't on for everything. Prior to the breakout room, I did hear 2 speakers, and the information was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish I was able to remain on because I did want to hear Walisha, and I think I had read something or seen something that said that video or something would be put up, and I hope to see that soon. But it was great overall from my perspective.
Thank you for that feedback, Deidre. And George posted in the conference with the YouTube video link.
That's the YouTube video of the evaluation meeting. It's 45
Oh, it's
minutes.
not.
Okay.
Yeah. So Teresa was talking about that. We had that meeting. I really thoroughly enjoyed the conference. I spend maybe once or twice a month, I have to be on what calls itself a conference, but it's really a webinar. The difference being you only see the speakers and the facilitators. You don't see other people's faces. There's not participation and discussion and interaction. And that was the best part about this, is there was discussion and interaction. I didn't participate in any distinct works breakout room. I bounced around them, which was both great but distracting, and so it leaves me not being able to have the most precise feedback. But I did find when jumping from one to another that people were having lively discussion, less in TPNW than the other three, but still having discussion. And I think the distinction that made this better than other so-called conferences I participate in, and will be excellent in person next year, are the action plans that people had, marching orders, they had clear instructions. You're going to talk about this, and at the end, you've got something that is actionable where there can be accountability, so that you didn't just spend your time talking and, you know, flapping your lips to no end. That was remarkable and worth repeating any way that you can. The technology wasn't perfect, but I've definitely participated in much worse, and that won't be a problem in person, except recording it is worthwhile. So making sure that technology is available. Also, and I'm taking from the evaluation, which I thought was a great piece of evaluation. And Adrian, you were there for the evaluation too, so you might be able to share stuff. But the recommendation to use technology next year to stream it, so that, yeah, there could be 200 or 300 people in Atlanta, but there could be another couple of hundred or more who are watching it on Facebook or SARN webpage or whatever, you know, form it is. So that's all I have. 5 stars.
Thank you, George. Adrian, I know that you're a little under the weather. Did you want to share? Yes or no?
I'm here. No, thank you.
Thank you. George, do you mind sharing the BOPA? Unless there's
Coming up.
anyone else that has any comments or anything from the Fannie Lou Hamer Branch Conference. Okay.
Well, I will speak up. Sorry to cut you short. I thought the gentleman, professor from Georgia State University, I believe, in his presentation was important, and I actually was able to basically learn a little bit more about the evolution of reparation and the movement for reparations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. All right. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will ask a question. Since the effort was to get more members for WIF, what was our total count as far as, did we get new people to come to the conference that were not WIF members, so that we could say that was a success?
Teresa Alameen, would you like to answer that? The question was, was there a count on the non-WILF members that are potential new WILF members who attended? Is that accurate, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the new people that came in that were not WIF members already.
Thank you. It was great because an old friend who was a WILF member many years ago in DC, she joined the conference, and she went online during the conference and renewed her membership. So she's planning on building a branch in DC. I'm sorry she couldn't get on the call today. But Marion Ungaro, who is an international traveler, and she and I know each other through the Green Party. And she joined, Rebecca Irby joined, and I'll have to check with Chris Wilbeck, the administrator, to find out how many people actually joined during the conference process. But my guess is that Tatiana Reyes from Rhode Island has already joined. And so I know that Akinyele is going to be telling other women in Atlanta about joining. So it would behoove you, Shante, to talk to Chris Wilbeck and get the updated list for Atlanta members, because the Atlanta branch is the largest of the new branches with about 30 members. And so we're counting on most of the Atlanta branch members to be at the conference in December. I've spoken with Bobby Hall and a few other people, and I'm pretty sure they will come, and folks from Project South and others. So we're like almost there in terms of getting to the goal of 100 or 150 attendees at the conference in December. And before I stop, before we do the BOPA, I just want to say that in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, Adrian Bernal, Rita Gonzalez, and Deidre Whittlesey are all members of the Southern Anti-Racism Network Board. Deidre is vice chair of the board. I'm chair of the board, and Adrian is on the administrative committee, and Rosa is a board member. George Friday is not on the board of SARN, but she is paid by SARN to do work for SARN. And I just think, since this question has come up in the past, and we're getting ready to talk about the BOPA, I just wanted to make sure that Philip Cole and Gene Kennedy and others who might not know that information are real clear, that the Southern Anti-Racism Network is building wealth in the US South. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Teresa Elamine. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the BOPA, the basis of political agreement. So the Wilf US Black Liberation Caucus was founded May 22nd of 2021. The decision-making by consensus addresses questions, concerns, and objections. The steering committee is 2 representatives of African descent from each branch and a monthly meeting of steering committee. The areas of work are reparations, freeing all political prisoners, criminal justice reform, ending mass incarceration, ending voter suppression, free Palestine solidarity, anti-racist transformation of Wilf US, in solidarity with other oppressed peoples of color, universal health care for all, Medicare for all, and immigration justice. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the BOPA?
Teresa Stack.
Yes, Teresa.
Well, I think what has become the practice since June is that people of color who are not of African descent are a part of the caucus, and they have been welcomed as representatives from their branch. Even though some might say we all are, no matter who you are, you come from the descendants of African peoples. But Rosa Saavedra is from Chile, and at some point, I hope that she will give a little report about the recent election in Chile. But Rosa represents the Triangle branch, and she has been consistently doing that. So I would like for us to acknowledge that some of the representatives from branches will not all be people of African descent. Adrian Bernal, who is Chicano, he's in the Metro Atlanta branch, and he's been consistent in his participation. And I would like for us to reach consensus on accepting that diversity within the caucus, with the understanding that it was founded by people of African descent, and that we do prioritize the participation of people of African descent. But we have to look at the objective reality because Rebecca Irby is Jamaican and Indonesian. That's her ethnicity. But she lives in Detroit, and she works with an organization called New Detroit. So her life is spent working with people of African descent. Deidre Whittlesey and I are two people of African descent, and we represent the Fannie Lou Hamer branch. I'm not sure who the representatives are from the Triad. I do know that we said Mary White and Rosa, but I do think we need to visit exactly who the representatives are from all of the branches that are present on the call here, and also make sure that we are consistent about having two representatives. If two representatives of color do exist in the branches, particularly Fresno and San Francisco, because it's my understanding that they had only one person of color or one person of African descent. I know that Boston only has one person of African descent, and that's Julie. Sorry, she's not here today. But we need to examine who the real representatives are who are on the steering committee, because I think we've been kind of loosey-goosey about that, which is why I'm encouraging Felina to join the Jane Addams branch, and hopefully another person of African descent from the Jane Addams branch can also join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we reach a consensus that we would like two representatives of color from each branch
George Stack.
with founded the Black Liberation, when the BOPA was founded, that the intention was to have two representatives of African descent. Thoughts, comments?
George Stack. Can I speak?
George, are you trying to say something? Your face
I
is
am.
lighted, but you're on mute.
My internet is unstable, so can y'all hear me?
Yes,
I wanted to identify the two branches. No,
yes.
not the two branches. The two representatives for Triad are myself and Kim Thomas. It was
Can't hear you
Shemaiah
now. You
Haynes.
just went out.
Oh my God. Okay, you might have to hit record again. I'll try to type it in the chat, although I'm not a good typist, but I will try.
Okay. Gene Kennedy said that Fresno had another member join. His name is Dr. Reverend Floyd Harris. So Fresno meets that criteria. And Felina Farley asked the question, are we missing environmental racism?
Are you hearing me now?
I can hear you now.
I stopped sharing. I was getting the message about internet, and I was afraid it would stop. So, and
No worries.
I apologize
hit
if I've
record.
interrupted. Seems like
I started recording, so.
Oh, good. Our two reps are myself and Kim Thomas. It was Shemaiah Haynes, originally, but now it's Kim. That's all.
Okay. Okay. And give me 2 seconds to find the boba. Does anyone else have any comments? All right. So it seems as if,
Excuse me, Shantae. I think for the record, we need to formally declare we've reached consensus on the change, and George has the ability to make that change. So where it says steering committee to representatives of African descent from each branch, that should be changed to 2 representatives of color from each branch. So we really do need to ask the question if there are any objections to the proposal. And we need to find out if we have consensus before we can.
correct.
leave
And
this
inside
item.
of the chat, I think that most of the, with looking at consensus, it appears that most of the branches currently have 2 representatives of African descent. So the question ends up being, does it need to be changed or does it need to be the same?
Well, I am proposing the change based on what I know. Rosa is not a person of African descent, and she has clearly well represented the triangle. The other members in the triangle are Ashley Carrington and Mary White. And Ashley's not here today, but I think she still wants to be involved. Mary White is quite elderly. She's over 80. And so I know she's really slowing down. So I am proposing the change. So I do want us to reach consensus on the change. 2 representatives of color from each branch. That is the definitive change I'm recommending. And I would like to see that people are in agreement on that so that we will not exclude Rebecca Irby. We will not exclude Rosa Saavedra.
Or Adrian Bernal, as you mentioned before. I agree. Could we reach a consensus? Who all is in favor of this
George.
change?
George Stack.
Aye.
I wasn't voting. I had a question.
Okay, George.
I understand the wording, 2 representatives of color from each branch. I also thought I heard you say, Teresa, when you were making that suggestion, to make sure we were not excluding people, but that we would have a priority is not the right word, but we would seek out members of African descent. Is there a way to not lose that phrase? Because I don't like saying at least one of African descent. But I also would like to not lose the phrase. I'm not creating a blocking concern at all. And hey, Marion Douglas Ugaro, it's my fault that you're late. So that's all. I would like to keep the phrase of African descent if we can. Otherwise, I'm good.
Okay.
It can't be your fault. It's not your fault.
Well, Stack, Shantae.
Okay, Teresa.
Well, I hear what George is saying, and that's correct. 2 representatives of African descent where possible. And some kind of way, it needs to be say, persons of color can be substituted if there is no person of African descent, because as you know, WILF is an overwhelmingly white organization. There are very few members of color, period. There are many branches that are all white branches, like in Philadelphia, like in Sacramento. Were it not for Philip in the Bay Area, it would be an all-white branch, as I understand it. Philip can correct me if I'm wrong. But the limited number of people of African descent is something we've been trying to correct by organizing branches in the South led by women of African descent. I'm looking forward to Marion organizing a DC branch soon, because she and I know lots of women in DC, and I know we could find 10 to join. And Marion has her hand up, so I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Marion and then Philip Cole. Marion?
Thanks, everybody. I apologize, I'm late because I forgot. Scheduling is something else, and during this season anyway. So thank you all, because I know George, Friday, and Teresa from the Green Party, our Green Party activism over the last, I forget, decade plus, way more than a decade. I had been involved with WILPF because I didn't even know that Teresa, you and I talked recently, but I hadn't known that you were even involved with WILPF. And I was going to meetings here in Washington, trying to revive the Washington chapter. And I did have one meeting that was like 3 years ago, back in 2019. That's a whole nother issue. But dealing with the structure of WILPF, as you all have mentioned, the cultural reality of its history, who put it together, and trying to do a transformation, it is not easy, and you can't take anything for granted. I'm not trying to be rude or anything, but I also would put in my concern about us using the phrase of African descent, not because that's not a valid phrase in many contexts. However, from my experience, I'm Black American. That's the term I use for those of us who are from the United States, whose families were enslaved here, basically whose families were created here. It's a huge issue about who we are as a people, as a population. We are people of African descent, but we're not the only ones. So when people who are from other ethnic backgrounds pop up and say, hey, how about me? I think that there's an issue. Who's representing whom? I have seen too many cases, because I live in Italy too. I'm from Washington, D.C., born here, born at Howard University, Freedman's Hospital. I'm a grandmother. I'm well over 60. I've lived in different parts of the U.S., grew up at Southern University in Louisiana, the largest HBCU in the United States, went to Penn State University, not by choice, but that's the way it was. Went to Lincoln in Pennsylvania also. I live in Italy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've worked in the Caribbean. My sister-in-law is Black from Costa Rica, worked in Haiti, Jamaica, Peru, Nicaragua, et cetera, and lived in Kenya, been in Tunisia, Burundi, etc. And London. London is a real hot pot for where you have Black people from the Caribbean and you have continental Africans, but nobody talks about the history of Black America because of Britain. This Black America was here in what is now the United States because of British slavery and French slavery, the slave trades. Before the United States even existed, Black America, we were already here. And the British have the oldest, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to take too much longer. The British have the oldest genealogical document that pertains to the Black American people. And it's called the Book of Negroes from the period when the slave owners over here, the British subject slave owners, decided they wanted to separate from Britain, because Britain was about to abolish slavery and the African slave trade. That's what happened in the 1770s. And they had a list of like 3,000 Black Americans, our ancestors. It's a military document, and most of us don't even know about it. But anyway, so to say of African descent, to me, is not sufficient to what we really are trying to get at. And that we're not trying to consciously exclude anybody else. But on the other hand, I want somebody to be there who is from the Black American ethnic population and appreciates what it means to be from here. Okay, I've been in too many different kinds of situations. Nobody does anything for us in the Caribbean. Nobody's doing that much for us on the continent. God bless them all. But, you know, I've worked in Congress in the Black Caucus for Congressman Major Owens, who's now deceased. He was Black American originally from Memphis, Tennessee, before he ended up in Brooklyn, New York. And he took a seat from representing Brooklyn Congress after Shirley Chisholm, who was actually a Barbadian American. Okay, she was Bajan. I don't begrudge her that. But on the other hand, neither she nor a whole bunch of other people have talked about what does it mean from your ethnic background to be here among the Black Americans. Does it mean something positive? Do you think it means something negative? Is it something you want to hide? These are discussions that we need to have. But then there's also, I've met people who are of African descent, who are members of Native American nations, registered Native Americans, okay, registered tribal members. So, you know, also Latinos, plenty of Afro-Latinos. So to really understand what we are, you know, the universe of people that we are including when and it's not to exclude, but just to know that it doesn't mean the same just because a person is Black. Nowadays in the United States, it's not like it was in the 70s or even the 80s, you know, and we have to have everybody sitting at a table that is of African descent needs to really explain their understanding of what that means. I'm gonna stop right there and thank y'all very much.
Thank you. Definitely. Thank you. Philip Cole.
Okay, first of all, I really appreciated hearing from the gentle lady preceding me. It was very interesting. My family's been here since the 1770s, so there was a lot of Black people here, and there was a lot of Black people here who were not slaves in that era also. And that's something a lot of people leave out of the mix. All Black people were not slaves in America, regardless of how they got here. The other part I wanted to state for the record, there are more than one Black member of the San Francisco branch of both in the San Francisco branch, and there are several in the East Bay branch also. They are not as active as others, but I have heard from a few, and they're just lax members, but they are under membership roles currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Well, Shante, it's unclear what people are offering as alternative language. So I would suggest we table this issue to the January meeting.
I accept your suggestion. Is everyone okay with tabling this conversation of the languaging of two representatives of descent? You know, I'm leaving it as an open space. Does that look like brown and Black descent, Latino, or we have to get this language clear and flat. So is everyone okay with tabling this until the next meeting? If you could raise your digital hands or put it in the chat, please. There's 11 people. Okay, everyone's agreed to table. Thank you. All right, We're gonna stop the screen share. And return to our agenda. It's 4:56. I'm committed that this meeting ends no later than 5:30 p.m. So on this,
George Stack.
yes, George.
If I recall correctly, and I'm gonna look at it, you have me on the agenda next talking about the continuum. And other than asking if there are questions on it or if people want to see it, I don't have new information. We talked about it last month. The continuum goes from 1 to 5. Wilf US is maybe a 2.4. And the absolute lowest of any organization I've ever worked with in my 40 odd years of doing work with mostly white organizations or organizations whose board are at most 1/3 people of color. I have been thinking about these things lately. So I just wanted to share that in terms of the next agenda item. If there are folks that want to see the continuum or have questions, then fine. Otherwise, that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you, George. Does anyone need to see the continuum or have questions?
I don't believe Marion has seen the continuum, and I would suggest that George simply email it to Marion so that she can have her own copy of it to review. Because knowing Marion, I know she'll take a very close look at it, and it's part of a training document, Marion, for educating people with white fragility on how they can get over their white fragility and move more towards being anti-racist. So George, if you would share the continuum with Marion as an email document, I believe everyone else has seen it.
Very good. I will do that. Thanks so much for the suggestion.
Okay, and quickly, Felina put in the chat. I'm in the middle of researching vaccine waste and vaccine toxic dumping in Africa countries and low-income areas from productions. Also, no proper protocols for vaccine waste for expired vaccines. She had brought up adding environmental toxins or environmental racism to the BOPA. My suggestion is we table that until next month as well. Does anyone agree, disagree?
George Stack. My suggestion, not an agreement or disagreement, but when we identify who is facilitating the January meeting, I recommend that we suggest they add the language or proposed language for the BOPA change or revision and the addition of environmental racism as a proposed revision so that when we look at the BOPA next month, we see the proposed revisions that we're voting on. I want to suggest that to the next people who have to put together an agenda. I hope I make sense.
Teresa Stacks. Teresa Stacks.
Yes, Teresa.
George and I were talking about who hasn't gone yet in the round. And I seem to recall that the triangle has not gone. So Rosa, Ashley, and Mary could get together since Ashley and Mary are not here. Rosa, who is an excellent facilitator, I think would be able to help the three other people who are a part of the BLC in the Triangle to understand what went on at the meeting today. And I would appreciate it if Rosa would unmute herself and to speak on me drawing her into the January meeting leadership. If you would, please, Rosa.
Sure. I would be willing to contact both Mary and Ashley. Mary, I think I need her contact information, but I have Ashley's. And I can talk with them. So I'd like to be able to kind of report back as to how, since they weren't here, as to, you know, if they have any questions. I'd like to be able to have some way to kind of answer any of their questions by checking in with somebody here.
The recordings will be, oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, the recording. Yeah. Okay. That, Shantae, that would be good if I could get the recording, or they could get the recordings, but I can send it to them.
Oh, that sounds like a perfect way of letting them know. But recall, we meet on the last Sunday of every month. And so that's somewhere around the 20-something of January. But hopefully we'll have it all cleared up, Shantae, by the time we adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Rosa. So next on the agenda is the action proposals. That was from last month and I did not take that off. That was a typo on my behalf. So I'll take full responsibility for that line item being there that should not be there. Next, I listed the Brian Nichols case. I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Brian Nichols case here in Atlanta, where the gentleman some years ago, and this is very warranted, like, I am not on the subcommittee around mass incarceration, and I don't have the time to add anything else to my plate, but this is something that definitely needs to be a part of the conversation. Brian Nichols, he was on trial for rape, and he ended up murdering like a federal agent, the judge, a court reporter. And so he's been sentenced to life. They gave him life and without, well, okay, so the problem is right now they're trying to charge him with murdering that federal agent, which will make it a federal crime, and they're trying to give him the death penalty. The significance is if they give him the death penalty, that will make it federal that they can issue out the death penalty instead of the death penalty being on a statewide level right now. One of my friends, I've had conversations with her about her joining Wilf. They've been, the federal agents have been allowing her to communicate with him inside of prison. And so we'll be doing a podcast on the 1st to discuss this a little more. I'd love support from Wilf with this matter, because we cannot let this become, I don't agree with him, who he is, like his demeanor and everything else in the writings and the recordings. But if this case turns federal and they start allowing executions on a federal level, then that is a no good for brown and black people. So that cannot happen. And so I would love any kind of support, any kind of questions, suggestions, or anything with being an activist that's been asked to be a part of the panel to discuss Brian Nichols' case.
George Stack.
Yes, George.
Teresa Stack.
You're saying that if this happens, it sets a new precedent allowing the federal government to sentence people to death.
Yes.
So that just exponentially.
They're using the Brian Nichols case as
right.
Yes.
That like makes it worse by many, many times. Understood. So what is the action to take? Come to this web thing on that you're talking about? What can people do?
Well, if I could jump in, there is a death penalty at the federal level. There are 23 states that have done away with the death penalty. Lots of states try to turn cases into federal cases in order to have the death penalty. We don't know enough about the death penalty. At the conference on December 11th, in the breakout on ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, the person who's an expert is with the Southern Center for Human Rights. The death penalty exists at the federal level big time already. What states are starting to do is break away from the death penalty. So like in the state of New York, where they don't have the death penalty, they often turn cases into federal cases in order to get the death penalty. That's true in Illinois, and it's true in 20 other states, that when they want to kill somebody, they turn the case over to the feds. So that problem already exists, Shantae. It wouldn't
Yes.
be setting a new precedent.
It would, because right now what they do is they sentence them to death on a federal level, but they just hold them with life without the possibility of parole or probation. Like they haven't been executing on a federal level. The death penalty was actually ruled cruel and inhumane treatment back in the 70s. There was a white guy who murdered two people. He tried to commit suicide and failed. And then he murdered two people. At the time of him being sentenced, he said, when I murder these two people, I plan to die. And because of that, I believe it was in 1978, because of that case, that's why the death penalty was reinforced and brought back into, it was in Florida. And that's why the death penalty in the US became what it is today. There's been moratoriums in different states, but on a federal level, they haven't been executing people. They are proposing to execute on a federal level, not just housing people indefinitely and saying that they're going to execute. The states have been executing, but on a federal level, they haven't been executing.
Well, it's not because they don't have the ability to do it. And that's the legal part that you seem to be missing, Shantae. It is legal for the federal government to kill people. True, they haven't been killing a lot of people. North Carolina has not done away with the death penalty, but they haven't killed anyone in several years. They kill a lot of people in Texas. They kill a lot of people in Georgia. They kill a lot of people in states where they have an active death penalty. But in the states where there is no death penalty, the death penalty does not exist in the state of Maryland. The death penalty does not exist in the state of Illinois or the state of New York or the state of Massachusetts. That information was provided to us at the conference. Joya Thornton named all of the states that have eliminated the death penalty or have a moratorium on them. It's only 23 states. So, but the death penalty is legal at the federal level. There can be no dispute about that, whether they've killed anybody or not. Well, it's still legal at the federal level. And that's the part, when we start talking about taking action, we have to be sure we're correct in what we're talking about, not just that the federal government hasn't killed anybody in a long time, but they do still have the death penalty at the federal level. And that's a fact which should not be in dispute. Over.
Okay, then my apologies, I was wrong. I just know that they're trying to take this Brian Nichols case and make it a federal execution, not life. And Rosa put in the chat, most recent federal execution was of Dustin Higgins, who was executed on January 16, 2021. Marion.
Okay, thanks everybody. Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so, because I haven't worked internationally with human rights issues in, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the Organization of American States. But I'm asking, is this with regard to WILPF, is this an issue because the United States is not in line with international norms and standards, which I forget what the number is. The United States the only so-called advanced Western country that actually has the death penalty? Is that what we're trying to get at here? I know we're talking about a particular individual. We do that, these campaigns, but are we trying to do a WILPS strategy that really, focuses in hard on reversing the death penalty in the United States at the federal and state levels? Thanks.
And the answer is yes, Marion. The Advancing Human Rights Committee has 5 subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees is ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. The person who is the convener of that subcommittee is Samantha Turner. There is a meeting coming up in January. I don't remember the date. Samantha is in the triad branch. So perhaps George Friday can find out when Samantha plans to convene that subcommittee. But the Advancing Human Rights Committee of WILPF has 5 subcommittees. Ending mass incarceration and the death penalty is one of them. So this is very much a WILPF issue. And WILPF work committed to doing it. Over.
Thank you, Teresa Alameen. I will, I just knew that this was a situation that needed action, because I know that Biden and Harris are both like a part of this conversation. So they're planning on moving forward. They just haven't decided on what that looks like. I'll get the more specific information to George and Teresa to be dispersed as they feel that's appropriate inside of the WILPF conversation. And that is all that I have on that matter. Yes, Marion.
I just wanted to ask because, we've had incredible jurists, judges, and legal experts like Thurgood Marshall and Leon Higginbotham, the late Judge Leon. Well, both of them are deceased now. But do we actually have, aside from the National Black Lawyers, no, I forget the name of the group, the Black Lawyers Association, but I'm thinking about the not bar associations, National Bar Association. I'm thinking about the organizations of lawyers of color in the US, where we need to have some, body with the legal background and the role but the moral commitment, who's also fighting against this, also based on the fact that it's used against us. Like I said before, Native Americans, you don't see too many Asians getting the death penalty, but Native Americans, Black Americans, as well as, vulnerable or poor white people. But I'm because there are people who understand this, who are working on this issue. What's that brother's name in Alabama? Brian, the lawyer. And others.
Brian Stevenson. Hold on, Marion. Because
yes, thank you.
Amnesty International US is a premier organization committed to ending the death penalty in the United States. When Troy Davis was murdered by the state of Georgia in 2011, Amnesty International went all out. We had buses from all over Georgia trying to save the life of Troy Davis, and they killed him anyway. And it was then that I made a commitment to work on it, because that's what Troy Davis asked us to do on his deathbed, work to end the death penalty. And there are lots of books written about it. There's lots of information, but the movement to end the death penalty is weaker than I've seen it in decades, which is why we started the subcommittee inside of WILPF with a commitment to abolishing it. California got close to doing it a few years ago, and they lost. So California still has the death penalty.
Well, what I was saying.
I hear what you're saying. It's not about lawyers, it's about movement building, is the point I'm making.
I know, Teresa, but I'm saying that there's also the international, we have US citizens who are in other countries, because this will take also outside pressure on the United States from so-called US ally countries and other populations. We always see things domestically, but applying leverage from outside the US is also really important. That's all I'm saying. And that's part of the movement building. Thank you.
Well, the thing of it is the US empire tells everybody else what to do, not the other way around. And that's a reality that should not be dismissed. Nobody else in the so-called industrialized countries have the death penalty. There's no death penalty in South Africa. There's no death penalty anywhere in Europe. There's a death penalty in China. There's a death penalty in many of the Middle East countries. They cut off your head or do whatever. But in terms of the countries that are supposed to be in the so-called developed world, they did away with the death penalty a long time ago.
Well, international public opinion is much more important and accessible with the social media tools. You know, when you saw Black Lives Matter sweep the world, people with signs and other, this is really important. And I'm just going to make one example. There was a case when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California, and here is this European immigrant who's able to get to be governor of a US state, which a Black American has not been able to do. But his hometown, back in Austria, okay, I'm talking about through a regular election. His hometown in Austria, they had a statue or something of him. They took it down because he executed this Black American man in California. I just wanted to share that because most of us have not heard about that. And public opinion is also international. It's not just domestic.
Marion, I love you, but you just be so wrong about a lot of facts. There has been a Black governor in the state of Massachusetts. And so you get a lot of stuff wrong sometimes, Marilyn. So
no, it's Marion. And I'm sorry, I forgot about him. Yeah, Massachusetts. We can
talk later about this. But Shantae, I suggest that people attend the meeting of ending mass incarceration and the death penalty, which will be coming up in the month of January. And if George can send that information out to all of us, people who are passionate about ending the death penalty should join the WILF US Subcommittee of Advancing Human Rights. That's what I'm gonna do, because I brought a speaker to that subcommittee who's an expert on where the movement is to end the death penalty. So I know the people who are actually doing the work in the US, Marion, on ending the death penalty. And I will talk to Samantha about getting one of those persons from the Catholic workers who the Catholic Church is committed to ending the death penalty. When a life is saved in the United States, the bells ring out at the Vatican. So I understand the international aspect in support of ending the death penalty in the United States, Marion. And I would suggest that you join that subcommittee on ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. Because we need to strategize how we get more states to say no. Because the more states that say no, then we can get the federal government to stand down. That is the way the process works. You know, all that Black Lives Matter stuff, and look at where we are now. The white supremacists are better organized than I've seen them in 50 years.
Agreed.
So you can make a lot of noise all day long, but at the end of it, you've got to have a strategic plan for the results that you're trying.
Okay, I want to make one last point, and Teresa, your personality is something else. I have a strong one too. But let me just tell you that when a major economic trading partner of a particular state, whether it's Mississippi or California, I'm talking about from outside the United States, lets a particular governor know that they're watching the policies of that state, that means something. I've done a little bit of strategizing. I worked in Congress. I worked on Habeas when President Aristide was overthrown. I worked for Major Owens, who was the person elected by the Congressional Black Caucus back in the early 1990s to deal with the reaction, the U.S. government response to the overthrow of Aristide, the first overthrow of Aristide in 1991. I worked on that personally, and when Aristide went back to Haiti, he was taken by helicopter. This was on CNN, and we actually should have access to that footage because most people don't even know this. He went back by helicopter in October of 1994. They took him to the National Palace, and right there on the steps, the first person he thanked was Major Owens, and I was doing the work behind the scenes. So I'm just saying, we have to work on many levels. And yeah, like I said, economic pressure, because people always talk about, well, California, if it was a country, it would rank such and such and such. And it's true, because the economic trading partners in other countries with US states is a hell of a leverage point for pressure. So that's one of the things I'm saying. Thanks, ciao.
Thank you. So Teresa, I see your thing. Please get control of the meeting. I feel that the meeting has its own control. Everyone has a voice here, and I believe that everyone has expressed themselves. It's 5:23. The meeting is set to end at 5:30. We've heard various perspectives, various points of view. I'm grateful for everyone's perspective and everyone's point of view here. In moving forward in future meetings, my only takeaway is that I'd hope that everyone would consider that there are billions of people on this planet. And there are a lot of people doing the work behind the scenes in various capacities, some that we know and some that we don't know. And it's all about expanding our circles to expand these causes, because the causes are greater than us. And if we stay in this vacuum of what it means to be who we think we are, we miss out on the cause and the purpose of these meetings. So thank you for everyone that I've met, everyone that I haven't met. Thank you for expanding these conversations, because if we work together, we can actually make a difference in these worlds. Yes, Teresa.
I want to make sure we don't end the meeting without clarifying what the date is of the next meeting and confirming that Rosa is going to get with others in the triangle, and that the triangle branch will be facilitating. I just don't want us to leave the meeting before we determine that. Thank you.
Thank you. George?
We have announcements before we do the next meeting on the agenda.
Yes.
Two more things on the agenda, announcements, and then next meeting and facilitators. And I have
Yes.
an announcement.
Are there any? Oh, go ahead, George.
On January 14th, Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern is the next Racial Justice Subcommittee call. Subcommittee of the Advancing Human Rights Committee. And the next Advancing Human Rights Committee meeting is January 31st at 5 Pacific and 8 Eastern. And it's being facilitated by two Black Liberation Caucus members who are not here today, Ashley Carrington and Dee Murphy. I don't know the next meeting of ending mass incarceration and the death penalty. I couldn't find it in my email or notes, although they have a recording and I know it's on that. And I'm sure that Samantha will send something out soon. I just didn't find it. So that's it for me.
I see you, Philip.
And somebody put something in the chat. I couldn't read it.
Okay,
The meeting.
so hold on one quick second, Philip. Rosa said 5:30. It's 5:25. Rosa said that she'll make calls to Mary and Ashley. George, if you don't mind putting those dates in the chat, your internet went out a couple of times. Teresa, and then Philip Cole.
Yes, I have two dates for two of the subcommittees of Advancing Human Rights. The Ending Mass Incarceration and the Death Penalty Zoom meeting is on Monday, January 10th at 1 p.m. Samantha Turner is the convener. The next meeting of the UN Decade Subcommittee on reparations and the Decade for People of African Descent is Friday, January 14th at 7 p.m. So it looks like we have two advancing human rights subcommittees meeting on that day, racial justice at 1 p.m. and the UN Decade at 7 p.m., both on Friday. The UN for Women subcommittee is one of the other subcommittees. If Adrian knows when the immigration justice is meeting, Tina Shelton is the convener for that. And so the UN Decade for Women, Barbara Nielsen, and I think Jennifer Bailey are the conveners for that. And so hopefully information can be sent out about when they plan to meet. Over.
Couldn't come off mute. Thank you, Teresa. Philip Cole, and we have 3 minutes left. And so after
Yes.
your comment, we're going to close it out, okay?
My question is, are these times Eastern or Pacific? For these meetings?
Eastern. They're all Eastern, Philip, sorry.
So the meeting on the 31st would be 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock Eastern?
There is no meeting on the 31st. The next meeting of this committee is going to be the 30th, January 30th, which is the last Sunday in January. And we meet at 4 p.m. Eastern. January 31st is a Monday. So Shantae, are all hearts and minds clear? Do you think all the questions have been answered? I see Marion has her hand up.
Yes, Marion has her hand up, and it is 5:29. So Marion, my request is that you share with Velocity. And after that, everyone, please save the group chat. The dates are in there. Yes, Marion.
I apologize because I had a question. I think it has to do with the Decade for People of African Descent, but doggone it if the doggone thing went out of my head, but it'll come back and it'll be too late for right now. But yeah, the issues about this International Decade for People of African Descent.
Yes,
but anyway,
Marion.
I'll come back to it another time.
No, I'm the convener of that subcommittee, Marion, and we have each other's number. So feel free to call me anytime because I really need your help with that subcommittee because I know you know a lot about this topic. So please give me a call, Marion. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sure. All right. Thanks.
All right. So, George, if you don't mind to stop recording, and I'm going to stop recording. It's 5:30 p.m.